Welcome into the Money Down presented by BetPrep. I'm Tamara Brown, joined alongside Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino. Before we get started in today's college football betting angle show, let's give a shout out to Home Field Apparel for these amazing shirts that they fitted us in today for today's show. They are located in Indianapolis and they sell officially licensed, vintage, and extremely comfortable clothes. So make sure you go to their website, homefieldapparel.com, and use code TDN for 15% off your first purchase. Let's get started with our first matchup. And Joe, I'm starting with you. This is a showdown between Auburn and Texas A&M, two of the highest ranked two-loss teams. What's the tale of the tape between these two teams that led you to your pick this week?
I can see the result of this game going either way. Two good football teams here that are playing really well right now. But what I feel best about is the over at 49 points hitting. Both offenses have scored at least 30 points in each of their last two games, and those games were against SEC foes. Auburn quarterback Bo Nix, he's playing the best football of his career. The Tigers are balanced on offense. Tank Bigsby is having a great year running the football for them. And while Texas A&M doesn't necessarily have the same caliber of quarterback play, they have really good weapons on offense led by Isaiah Spiller, their dynamic running back. Anaya Smith is an X factor, and then that big tight end, Jalen Weidermeyer. So I think this game will be close with enough scoring for this over of 49 points to hit.
Before we go to Kyle's selection for this first matchup, just a reminder, if you're watching this right now, don't forget to go over to Instagram story and place your vote for today's selection of games. We will be showing the fans' selections throughout the show. For this first matchup, obviously the fans are going with the Aggies for this Texas A&M and Auburn showdown. Kyle, when you look at these two teams, both with two losses, both still ranked in the top 25, and obviously this is going to be Texas A&M's biggest test since beating Alabama.
Yeah, so for me, I don't have a great feel for what the outright outcome, the winner, is going to be, and the spread is very close. Auburn, they have an opportunity, they win this game, and that sets up the matchup with Alabama for a potential SEC championship game appearance. A&M's at home, they still have plenty to play for, as these are two of the top two-loss teams in the country. I'm with Joe on the over. This is kind of just a gut call for me. I don't think 50 points is an obscene ask between Texas A&M's rushing attack and Auburn's big playability. They're 12th in the country in explosive plays. Can very much see a 28-24 final score in this contest. But A&M getting it at home, I think that helps them get some juice and score a little extra and take care of business here on the over.
Kyle, I'm coming back to you for this second matchup between Purdue and Michigan State. Michigan State obviously looking to stay undefeated, and Purdue looking to spoil another top 5 team. What's the recipe to your selection for this Big Ten matchup?
Yeah, this is another scary game from a spread perspective. This has stayed pretty even at Michigan State -3 all week long. But there are defensive advantages aplenty in this contest. Purdue's defense is 4th in pass success, 17th in the pass rush, 26th in rush success, 10th in havoc, and 11th in preventing finishing drives inside the 40 with points. And that's just on Purdue's side of the ball with defense. Michigan State's defense, they're rated 8th in pass rush. They're 28th in preventing big plays. They're 13th in preventing drives inside the 40 from converting to points. And they won't be threatened by Purdue's rushing offense, which is 129th in rush success and 112th in line yards thus far this season. But Purdue's going to be up for this game, and they're at home. I do think this is a trap scenario. I'm staying away from money line. I'm staying away from Michigan State. I understand why you would take those. I also understand if you would take Purdue with the points, or if you wanted to put Purdue on potential upset for the second time this season against the top 3 team. But I'm going to take an under in this bet at 53.5 because of those defensive metrics, and hope that the common sense wins out here, and we're going to avoid the chaos altogether.
All right, Joe. Kyle is avoiding the chaos altogether. The fans have gone with Sparty. What do you got between this matchup between Michigan State and Purdue?
I'm with the fans here. I like Sparty -3 in this game, and I think Kyle identified it pretty well here. Vegas is counting on a letdown game for Michigan State against a Purdue team that has already proven able to be a spoiler. But I believe in Mel Tucker, the head coach of Michigan State. I believe in the makeup of this Michigan State football team. They play tough defense. They run the ball extremely well. I don't think that Purdue is going to be able to bottle up Kenneth Walker. Michigan couldn't do it last week. I don't think Purdue is going to do it this week. I don't think Purdue runs the football well enough to kind of play and dictate this style of game that they want to. And so I think this is a bad matchup for Purdue. I like Michigan State to handle their business on the road today.
Just like we all drew it up, the fate of the ACC lies in the Demon Deacons' hands. Wake Forest is 8-0 going into this game this weekend against UNC. The lowdown on this game, obviously we're starting with you, Joe, our ACC expert.
Yeah, get ready for a lot of points to be scored in this football game, but this is the week I think Wake suffers their first loss of the season. Give me the Tar Heels -2.5. They're the favorites in this football game. North Carolina has a lot of talent in the secondary. And when you talk about Wake Forest, it's all about Sam Hartman and throwing the football down the field. And North Carolina has plenty of NFL caliber talent in that secondary. They're limiting opponents this year to 221 points or yards per game through the air, which is a pretty decent amount considering who they've played. And Wake really relies on that big playability through the air that I think UNC can match up against. Obviously, the Heels can score as well. Sam Howell, he's got quite the connection brewing with Josh Downs. Him as a runner has been a big storyline this year where he's showing that dual threat ability, and that's helping this Tar Heels offense. And so I think the Heels spoil the Deacs season here today, and North Carolina has the offense to exploit, I think, some of the issues that Wake Forest has in their defense. So I'm all in on the Heels today.
All right, Joe's all in on the Heels with the spoiler alert for Wake Forest's perfect season. The fans have faith in Wake Forest and their ability to stay undefeated. Kyle, what do you have when you look at this matchup down in the ACC?
Yeah, so the Deacs, get them out of here. We're out of here. I'm taking North Carolina -2.5 at home. It's probably pretty demoralizing being 8-0 in the ACC and the College Football Playoff Committee effectively telling you to kick rocks. And now to top it off, you got to go on the road, go to Chapel Hill, play North Carolina, team that can score as quickly as you can, got really dynamic passing attack. I think this culminates with a Wake bubble bursting that has had a number of close calls over the last couple of weeks. They've had a couple narrow 3-point victories, overtime victories. The 14-point victory over Army that included like returning a fake field goal for a touchdown, which they conceded 56 points in that contest. So the over on 77 is tempting, but the one I have better confidence we're going to see materialize here is the Tar Heels -2.5 with an upset.
Kyle, we're going to you this time, starting with your Big Ten expertise with number 5 Ohio State heading out to the westernmost part of the Big Ten to face Nebraska. They're looking to stay undefeated. What can you share about these two teams that led you to your pick for this week?
Yeah, so Ohio State is playing about as well as anybody in the country right now. Offensively, they're averaging over 8 yards per play on the season. This offense is humming. They got a bunch of weapons. They got some young guys in the offensive backfield, but they got experience in the pass catching group. And they're going to score plenty of points. I'd say in this contest, probably up over 40, 42, 45, 48, which means I need Nebraska to find the end zone 3 times if the over is going to hit. And I think that does happen. So I'm going to take the over at 67.5. Last night, this total was at 66. So it's moved a pretty significant amount. I think you will get a lot of points. Nebraska can run the football. They have a running quarterback. Ohio State's middle of the road in tackling efficiencies. So this 67.5 can be a little bit of a scary number, but these are two teams that can run the ball. They're two top 40 tempo teams in the country. That's a recipe that I can get behind. I think Ohio State gets on top of them a little early, and Nebraska is going to have to hold serve, and I think they'll keep this close because they're playing at home.
All right, Joe. We've got Kyle going with the over. Fans are going with the Buckeyes. What did you have dialed up that led you to your pick for this week between these two Big Ten teams?
I'm not siding with the fans or Kyle. I'm going with Nebraska
Ooh.
plus 14.5. I think Ohio State wins this football game, but I think Nebraska
Okay.
covers. And
Okay.
you never love to hear Kyle making noises like that when you're talking about teams from his region. But here's my thought process. I have some level of concern about the Buckeyes offense struggling out of the gate today against a reasonable Nebraska defense, especially with the Buckeyes not having one of their top receivers in Garrett Wilson. And so I also have some level of concern about the Buckeyes pass defense. I think over the last year and a half or so, they've really struggled to be secure on the back end. And Adrian Martinez has proven able to kind of hit some throws down the field. And we have a Nebraska team that's at home. They played Michigan close. They played Michigan State close. They played Oklahoma close. So give me the backdoor cover as the Huskers keep it within 2 touchdowns when it's all said and done today.
I'll definitely be interested in seeing how this game goes, especially because both of you are on 2 different pages. But now let's put all of our eyes on the SEC. Joe, we're starting off with you. LSU and Alabama, both teams coming off a bye, one of the fiercest rivalries in the SEC West. What do you make of this SEC matchup when you look at these 2 teams?
Yeah, I never love predicting any team to cover 28.5, but I'm going to do it today here for the Tide. So give me Alabama minus 28.5. Alabama, there's 2 key numbers here that I want to cling to. Alabama 6-2 against the spread in the Tide's last 8 meetings with LSU, and Alabama has covered the spread in each of their last 7 SEC home games. LSU is in shambles, guys. The coach is fired, but he's still with the team. They didn't have enough players this week to hold a full football practice on Wednesday. And this is a quote from Ed Orgeron this week. He said, "We're too predictable by formations. We're too predictable on first down. We are very, very predictable on defense. We need to have more variety on first down. We give them the same looks over and over again. There's not much disguise." Well, a road date with Alabama is about the last thing you want to deal with when your football program is in this state. So give me the Tide at home and cover this thing in a very embarrassing night for the LSU Tigers.
All right, the fans and Joe think that LSU is in shambles. They're comfortable going with Alabama for this game. Kyle, I'm interested to see where you stand when you look at LSU and Alabama down in the SEC.
Well, I don't know if you heard that, but Coach O did call in there for a second and gave us an old "Go Tigers" since Joe was ripping off the old press conference quotes. I'm taking the over on 66.5 because 28.5, boy, that's a big number. 67. It's moved up. So this is a big spread, and I'm not touching 28.5. I think LSU can cover this spread. I do see the path that Joe laid out, and the issues, let's just call them the issues with the LSU program right now, are alarming to say the least. But this is an offense that can pass the ball when garbage time rolls around, and they can put up points quickly. I know from experience, they have popped several under bets against them this year in the fourth quarter of games by just putting points up on the board. So I'm going to bank on them doing the same this time around. I think Alabama wins easy, but 28.5, like, we're in that backdoor cover scenario where I really don't feel good about that big of a number when it's the LSU Tigers that are playing. I understand they're a little bit of a mess right now. So I'm taking the over because LSU, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. You have ruined a number of under bets for me this season. I'm going to bet you take the over this time around.
Kyle, we're moving on now to Liberty Ole Miss. The Flames are heading down south for a big game on the big stage. What's your prediction for this game?
Yeah, this is going to be a fun showcase. So much so that the Draft Network actually has some folks on the ground here for this contest in Oxford, and you can swing over to the Instagram account throughout the course of the day, our social channels, and we're going to have some videos of action on the field and the pregame, and so definitely make sure you keep your eyes peeled because this showcase between 2 of the more prominent quarterback prospects in this year's class, Matt Corral and Malik Willis, is an exciting opportunity. It seems like we always get one of these in November between guys who are in the running to be top quarterbacks. But this is the Hugh Freeze revenge game, right? He's playing his old team. I think this contest can be scrappy early on, but I also do think there's a talent discrepancy here that I think will show itself throughout the course of the game. especially because Ole Miss is playing at home. Joe's going to tell you about the guys that are injured for Ole Miss and how that might even the playing field, and that's fine. But look at the rest of the Liberty roster aside of Malik Willis, who is a top talent. I just don't think they simply have enough talent to hang in. I'm taking Ole Miss covering 9.5. It's under 10 points, which, if it was 10, I probably would have done the adjusted line thing that I did so much last week. Remember, Liberty dropped games already this season to Syracuse and Louisiana Monroe. You think they're going on the road in an SEC environment and getting it done and keeping it within one score? I'd be surprised. So therefore, give me Ole Miss laying the points.
All right, Joe, Kyle already teased that you've got some info for us on the injuries that Ole Miss has that led to your prediction. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I feel like Kyle's taking some exception with what I want to pick in this game, but I'm not letting him move me off of Liberty plus 9.5 today. There are questions about this Ole Miss offense right now. Matt Corral is clearly not himself. Only 3 points in the second half last week against Auburn, and they're without their number one receiver and their next two receivers, and so they're going to have to find a different script today to win. And Kyle said something that I've bought into a lot this year, and it's gotten me in trouble, and that's talent advantages. We know that Ole Miss is a more talented football team, but I think Liberty has a lot to prove here. They want to show up for their coach, Hugh Freeze, and they want to show up for their quarterback, Malik Willis, who is right there in this race to be the first quarterback off the board in the coming draft. And so I'm just going to kind of buy into those variables, a banged-up Ole Miss team that needs a different script today, Liberty getting behind their coach, Malik Willis showcasing himself in front of a massive audience full of NFL personnel people. And so I think Liberty at least keeps it close today.
Joe, we're going back to an SEC showdown, this time on the east side between Kentucky and Tennessee. This is an SEC West rivalry. Given what you know about both of these programs, what take do you have in predicting this week's game?
Man, Kentucky's got to feel some way about being the underdogs in this football game. Tennessee's the favorites to win. I'm not touching the result on this football game. I do like the over at 57 hitting today. Both teams have dropped their last two games. They're both hungry for a win. Tennessee's coming off the bye, and that offense is really humming this year, 37 points per game and over 450 yards of total offense. Did not see that coming, but Hendon Hooker has really ignited the Vols' passing attack. And even with some of the recent struggles by Kentucky, they can still score. They're averaging 27 points per game. And so I'm really excited about this Vols offense, especially with Hendon Hooker at quarterback. He's fully healthy. So give me all the points today. We just need for both of these teams to come out and have their normal game on offense against a middling Kentucky defense and a below average Tennessee defense. I think we hit this over pretty comfortably today.
Kyle, Joe staying away from both teams. He's going with the points. What is your take on Kentucky and Tennessee?
We're taking the over with Joe. We're on that over on 57. Listen, I really want to take Rocky Top in this game. They're coming off the bye, like Joe said. But this is what Kentucky does. They lull you to sleep, and then they win a big game, and they get you to buy in, and then they lose to Mississippi State in the pick 'em bet by 14 points. They've lost their last two, but Tennessee at least has the luxury of coming off the bye. But when I look at the point situation, the Vols play tempo. They can score points in a hurry. They create mistakes and explosive plays by how fast they play. They're the number one tempo team in the country. An air raid defense just tagged Kentucky for 31 points last week. I would like to think that this tempo offense can make some mistakes and gouge the Wildcats. And then on the other side of the ball, Kentucky's offense, I expect them to run through Tennessee like a hot knife through butter with how well they run the football and how physical they are. So I take the Vols tempo, and I take a rushing attack for Tennessee for Kentucky that will not get a lot of resistance from Tennessee. And I like that formula quite a bit.
Kyle, I'm interested to see what your formula is for Boise State and Fresno State. Fresno State sold out stadium, and the Broncos making their first trip to Bulldog Stadium since 2017. What's your Mountain West prediction, Kyle?
Yeah, this is a real peach to bet because both these teams are on the list, guys. Both of them are on the list. So I kept this one simple. We like to bring a lot of factoids and research, and there's a lot of great resources out there for making educated decisions as best as you can when you're betting games. But in this game, I asked myself, what do you think the most likely outcome is? And bet the opposite of that, because that's how both of these teams, betting them this season, is what they've done to me every single time. So with that said, I'm taking Boise +5 because my logic says Bulldog Stadium sold out. Fresno, I believe, is a better team this year. I believe they're a better coach team this year. But that's a small enough number that I said, you know what? Let's do it. Let's flip the card, and we're just going to do the opposite because every time I bet these teams, they let me down.
All right, Joe, you do not have a running list like Kyle does. It's as long as a CVS receipt. But what is your Mountain West prediction between Boise State at Fresno State?
Well, I have the same process as Kyle here, except for I just didn't do the thing where I flipped it to the opposite at the end. So I'm in on Fresno State -5 today. It's an interesting matchup here. Two teams that have played some really good football for the most part this season, but they've shown some hiccups of vulnerability. I think Fresno State, though, has been the more consistent squad recently, and they had big wins over San Diego State and Nevada the last 2 weeks. 3 weeks ago, they shut out Wyoming on the road. And so I'm going to side with the team with the better recent results, with a better defense and a better rushing attack in Fresno State to win and cover at home.
All right, last one in this section, Oregon at Washington. The 4-4 Huskies will face their biggest test yet, facing Oregon. Kyle, I'm going to start with you. What's your take on this Pac-12 matchup?
Yeah, well, Joe and I felt really good about taking the under in this football game because last night it was at 50.5 or 51.
51.
And then the forecast called for rain, and it's going to be cold, and it's a late game, and the total moved to 48. I'm stubborn. I'm staying on the under in this football game. Washington in regulation this season has scored 7, 10, 52 against Arkansas State, 17, 24, 17, 21, and 20 points. And now you play the Ducks. I think the home environment for Washington can give them a little extra juice to keep this game close, but it's going to be at the expense of the Ducks offense and not the other way around. Give me the under.
All right, Joe, what's your take on our final matchup of this first block of the show?
Well, wink, wink. I like the under in this football game as well, but give me Oregon -7. The Ducks are 13-2-1 against the spread in their last 16 meetings between these two football teams, and the Ducks have a lot to prove. They earned that number 4 spot in the college football rankings. They're a better, more talented team. I continue to be underwhelmed by Huskies head coach Jimmy Lake and his very conservative approach to football. That offense is boring. They have no big playability. And I think the difference today is this Oregon rushing offense that produces over 200 yards per game. And we have cold, wet conditions against a bad Washington run defense that gives up on average 178 yards per game on the ground. So give me the Ducks -7 to take care of their business against the Huskies.
Thank you, Kyle and Joe, for your insight on this week's slate of games. But when we get back, we'll have more insight from Patrick Everson of props.com when we get back with the BetPrep breakdown. Welcome back to the Money Down presented by BetPrep. Tamara Brown, Kyle Krabs, and Joe Marino here. Getting ready for the BetPrep breakdown with Patrick Everson of Props.com. Patrick, so glad to have you on for this week's slate of games. We're going to get started with the nation's highest-ranked two-loss teams in Auburn and Texas A&M. What do you got for us?
Well, this is obvious. This is an interesting game. Might be the best game on the docket today, especially if you just go by rankings. So talking about this with a couple of entities, including Scott Shelton behind the counter at BetMGM Nevada. This game went from A&M 4.5 down to 3.5, then to 4. Scott said there was definitely a sharp play on Auburn plus 4.5, and I've talked to a bunch of different books this week, Tamara, and it's all of them have indicated at least some level of sharp interest in Auburn anytime that line gets over 4. So now it's sitting at 4. Tickets 3-1 in favor of A&M, money 1.5 to 1 in favor of Auburn. Now that's at BetMGM Nevada, which is just BetMGM up and down Las Vegas Boulevard. I'm going to my screen here to look at the national picture at BetMGM. And ticket count is almost dead even. 51% Auburn, 49% Texas A&M. But money nationally for BetMGM is actually running a little bit more toward Texas A&M, almost 2-1 on the money. So a little bit different than the picture here just on the ground in Vegas. They're actually, BetMGM nationwide is probably going to be rooting for the road for the road dog today.
Patrick, for our second game, we know that LSU is quite in shambles this season, but this is one of the fiercest. This is one of the fiercest rivalries in the SEC West in LSU and Alabama. How are the books looking for this matchup down south?
Oh my gosh. So Scott Shelton said at BetMGM Nevada, tickets really close, dead even. A lot of people, at least on the ticket count, are taking all those points with LSU, thinking along the lines of what you're thinking. But he said money is still very lopsided to Alabama within that ticket count. What far just really lopsided. But again, that's the 5,000 foot view of Las Vegas, which I was told a few weeks back, really Nevada anymore only represents maybe not even a fifth, maybe about a sixth of all of BetMGM's handle nationwide, which is really surprising, but that's just how much sports betting is growing and how much BetMGM is growing. So when you look nationally at this game, which I'm doing so right now, LSU and Alabama, double checking my numbers here. And it's, doggone it, how's that not jumping out at me? There it is. I was going to say, how does 28.5 points not jump out at you? It's a lot of points. So two-way ticket count, a little bit of a lean toward Alabama, 54% to 46%. Money, 61%, 39%. So while it's really lopsided here in Las Vegas at BetMGM books for the Crimson Tide, not so much so overall. The whole picture at BetMGM, only 61% of cash on the Crimson Tide. So quite a few people are actually taking all those points and just hoping somehow LSU can keep this within 4 touchdowns. I'm not sure if they can, and I know I'm going to probably go bet Alabama first half just for the hell of it, but that's what they think.
That sounds like a Kyle Krabs pick right there. That's definitely something that he would do, picking
Great
Alabama
minds.
in the first half.
Great minds.
Let's go to
We're getting the worst
now.
of the number, though, Kyle.
I still feel better than
28.5.
Yes, absolutely.
Big Ten, number 5 Ohio State, heading out to the westernmost part of the Big Ten in Nebraska. Patrick, what are the books telling us about this Big Ten matchup?
You know, I think they're telling us something right now, and I haven't gotten an update in like the last 20 minutes, but Twin Spires is one of the books I check with regularly and checked with late last night and early this morning. And they're down to 13.5 on this game. And I've seen a couple of books just before I came on, we're down to 14. So this is kind of trending toward Nebraska. And if I had to guess, that would have to be sharp play on the Huskers because Ohio State's getting hammered everywhere. And at BetMGM Nevada, it's 5-1 tickets, 4-1 money on Ohio State. When you look at this game nationwide at BetMGM, it's 3-1 tickets, almost pretty much 6-1 money on Ohio State. So the Buckeyes are definitely getting, plenty of tickets and cash. There's got to be either that, there may have been an injury announcement or something that I overlooked this morning, but there's certainly something going on to bring that number down a tick or two at multiple books this morning, so it'll be interesting to see where this ends up, and if some bettors start seeing some value in Ohio State, some sharp bettors might even hit them now that it's at one or two spots, 2 touchdowns or even less than 2 touchdowns. It's interesting. Some interesting goings on this morning.
Definitely interested to see where the books stand for Michigan State and Purdue. Purdue obviously capable of committing the upset against top 5 teams, and Michigan State undefeated still.
Yeah, this is an interesting game just because it's been such a low, Michigan State undefeated, potential, consideration for the college football playoff, obviously, and of course the Big Ten title and so forth, and yet going to unranked Purdue and pretty much laying -3 all week. Some places went to 2.5 a little bit. I've heard from multiple books there was a little bit of sharp play on Purdue, but -3 has kind of been the consensus number on this. BetMGM Nevada, it's all Michigan State tickets and money, 6-1 and 10-1, but parlays as well are definitely taking the Spartans. Nationally, similar situation at BetMGM nationwide, 85% of tickets, 86% of handle on Michigan State, so really lopsided there. I'm a little bit surprised maybe the number didn't get back over 3, but I think part of that is I know from a couple of books I spoke with a little bit earlier in the week, 3.5 was the tipping point for sharp play to come in on Purdue. And as you pointed out, Tamara, the Boilermakers do have an upset of Iowa on their belt. So, maybe people are thinking that the Big Ten is going to continue to cannibalize itself in the college football playoff picture. It could happen, Dave. We'll see.
Thank you so much, Patrick, from your insight. That was Patrick Everson from props.com. When we get back from this commercial break, we'll have the leaderboard, the prize pick, player parlay, and of course, our go for 2 and our bold bets.
It may only be the first week of November, but that doesn't mean it's too early to start really diving into mock drafts, especially over at the Draft Network, where TDN scout Kyle Krabs just published his 3rd mock draft of the 2022 draft cycle, and I'm here today to dive into it. Let's mock the mock. I'm Brian Perez from the Draft Network, and I want to start off this analysis of Krabs' mock draft by saying I think he did a good job with the quarterbacks. A lot of draft analysts are going to tell you 4, maybe 5 quarterbacks will come off the board in the first round, and I think that's more being like a creature of habit, getting used to that number of guys being picked in the top 32 at quarterback in recent years, dating back to basically 2018. We've had 3, 4 drafts in a row with high-quality quarterback prospects. It's kind of spoiled the draft fan a little bit to make you think that that's the quality of quarterbacks you're going to get every year, but that's not the case in 2022. If I had to put an over-under on how many quarterbacks are going to get picked in the first round, I'd probably be right around 2. So for Krabs to have 3 coming off the board in the top 32, I kind of like what he's got there. And his first quarterback that gets picked is at number 5 overall in this mock to the Washington football team, and it's Liberty's Malik Willis. I like Willis as a prospect. I think he might end up being the top quarterback in this draft like Kyle has in this mock. But a top 5 pick, I don't know about that. I think he has upside. I think he brings that dual skill set as an exciting, athletic, make you miss in the run game, big arm in the passing game quarterback. But I don't think he fits the narrative of a top 5 pick. But again, supply and demand. The demand will push these guys up the board like it does every year. And if Willis ends up being the top quarterback in this year's class, he very well could end up being a top 5 pick, especially if someone like Washington ends up in that area. They're trying to fix this quarterback plague that they've had since missing on Dwayne Haskins a few years ago. The curse of Ryan Fitzpatrick getting hurt early in the season. They can't get it right at that position. So taking a swing on a guy like Willis in the first round, it makes sense. But if that's their player, maybe they look to trade down a little bit. I think 5 might be a little bit too high. But again, that's why mock drafts are fun this time of year. You get to kind of figure out what the landscape of the early part of the first round will be. What does the middle part of the first round look like as well, especially when you talk about quarterbacks, which is where we're going next with Kyle's other quarterback, or the second quarterback that comes off the board, and that's Matt Corral. What a season this guy's having, right? And in Kyle's mock, he has him, let me just go to the tape here, folks. He has him coming off the board at number 9 overall to the Philadelphia Eagles. And look, you can't do anything more to boost your draft stock than Corral has done at Ole Miss this season. The guy has, looks like the total package, right? He's got good size, good arm strength, good ball placement, and he's putting up good numbers. There's no reason to not like this pick. But if Matt Corral, I just ask you this, if Matt Corral was in last year's draft, would we be talking about him in this range? Where would he have measured up against guys like Trey Lance and Zach Wilson and Justin Fields, obviously Trevor Lawrence, even Mac Jones? I don't know if he would be in that top 5 mix. And those guys were the top 15. Those guys all got picked in the top 15. So for Corral to be all the way up in the top 10 in this mock draft, I think it's more an example of a byproduct of this year's draft class forcing quarterbacks higher than they really would go in a traditional year if we had some real blue chippers, some real first-round guys in the draft class. A guy like Corral would not be the 9th overall pick. But look, the Philadelphia Eagles, they probably are going to go into the offseason not sold on Jalen Hurts, needing to find quarterback next. And it's a slippery slope to assume you're going to find one in free agency. You can check out his mock draft and all the others that we have over at thedraftnetwork.com. Just hit the mock draft tab. You'll find everything to fill your mock draft needs there. You can follow me over on Twitter at Brian Perez NFL, and keep coming back to thedraftnetwork.com every day for your up-to-date NFL news and NFL draft analysis.
Welcome back to the Money Down presented by BetPrep. We are so excited to get into this last part of our show, but before we do, let's take a look at the leaderboard to see how Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino are doing.
Let's take a look.
No.
Let's take a look at the leaderboard. It's those damn adjusted lines they got me. I'd have been in the plus too. Mm-hmm. Joe, correct me if I'm wrong. You had a 3-unit bet last week?
I did, that's the difference between making money and losing money.
If your 3-unit bet had hit, I'm not a math guy.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure you'd probably be, in the positive, right?
Yeah. Would like to thank the Kentucky Wildcats for just playing such a good game against Mississippi State.
Yeah,
Appreciate
that's
that.
what they did.
I think that both Kyle and Joe learned valuable lessons last week with their adjusted lines and 3-unit bets and many other things. But it's a new week, and you guys have a chance to redeem yourselves. I say that every week. It sounds like a broken record, but this is really the week. Let's get over to our Prize Pick player parlays. Let me tell you about our friends over at Prize Picks. This is the easiest way to play daily fantasy. You get to pick the over-under on 2 to 5 players, and you have a chance to win up to 10 times your entry by picking areas such as touchdowns and receptions and yards and fantasy and beyond. And the best part is there's more sports than just football. But obviously today we're talking football. Kyle, what is your Prize Pick player parlay for this week?
Well, I can tell you I am already mentally prepared to have my heart broken like I was last week because I hit the 2 early ones and then I missed the last one with a Chris Olave reception total. So I'm mentally prepared for the same thing to play out. But I have Jordan Davis, the defensive tackle, against Missouri, and he's got about 75 pounds on the starting center for Missouri today, getting 2.5 tackles in this football game. I have Jahan Dotson getting over 88.5 receiving yards today. And then I also have Illinois running back Chase Brown effectively rushing for 1 touchdown today. He had a great showing when they played Penn State. He's playing his best ball. He started the season slow, so I've got him getting in the end zone today.
All right, that's Kyle's Prize Pick player parlay, and you have the opportunity to do the same and get in on this fun. Use code TDN so you can start doing your Prize Pick player parlay too. Let's go over to you, Joe, now to hear what you've got for us this week in your Prize Picks.
Yeah, I think that Malik Willis, Liberty quarterback, he shows up today and puts up some yards against Ole Miss in front of all the scouts. So over 234.5 passing yards. Jordan Addison, really good wide receiver there at Pitt. Him and Kenny Pickett have quite the connection going. I just need 6 receptions today out of him against Duke, a secondary that doesn't really have an answer for that type of a talent. And then Noah Sewell, the linebacker for Oregon, over 7 tackles against Washington, a game where we know there's going to be plenty of running the football. It's going to be cold and wet, and I think Sewell's going to pile on the tackles today.
So that's Joe and Kyle's prize pick player parlays. You can get on this too using code TDN for up to a $100 bonus. Pick your 2 to 5 players, pick the areas of stats that you want. And if you don't want to do football, that's fine. There's plenty of other sports to choose from. Thank you guys for both of you sharing your prize picks today. Let's move on to our Go for 2 picks. Super excited to see where you guys are going this week. Hopefully redeem yourselves. Joe, let's start with you. What's your first Go for 2?
Yeah, this is one of those sprint to the podium type moments. We talk about that with the NFL draft. You like a player that's on the board that's a no-brainer. You run to the podium, turn in the card. That's what I'm doing here for the under in the Pitt-Duke game. The over-under is set at 64. I like the under, actually 64.5, even better. Pitt is going to score a lot of points in this game. They're probably going to top 40 points. But Duke, no. They've managed just 7 points over the last 2 weeks against bad defenses in Wake Forest and Virginia. And, they only scored 7 against Wake, and they scored none against Virginia. UNC, not a great defense there. They held the Duke Blue Devils to only 7 points in early October. I just don't think there's any way that Duke does their job today for the over to hit. I think Pitt can score 50 today, and I still don't think we touch this over.
All right, no faith in the Blue Devils today. I didn't expect anything less than you to pick an ACC team for your Go for 2. Kyle, what's your first Go for 2?
He took all my talking points. I'm taking the under on Pitt and Duke, under 64.5.
Wow.
I said, in my notes, I say fading Duke to score points is a comfort bet. You feel good about it. And how can you not? Duke scored 7 points or less in 3 of the last 4. Boom. Joe hit that one. Do I think Pitt can drop a 50-burger on Duke? Boom. He hit that one. But do I think Duke scores 17 or more? No. And because of that, 64.5, feel really good about our chances. I'm taking the under as well with Joe.
I really enjoyed how much you guys have agreed today. This is like a record. Kyle, I'm going to go circle back to you for your second Go for 2 pick here.
Okay, so I am going back to Piscataway, New Jersey, where the Rutgers Scarlet Knights are hosting the Wisconsin Badgers. And bad news for Rutgers, especially since you ruined a Go for 2 of mine about 3 weeks ago. I'm taking the Badgers on the road, minus 12.5. And the reason being, Wisconsin is figuring things out at the right time. They beat Illinois by 24, Purdue by 17, and Iowa by 20 in 3 of their last 4 contests. I think they're too big, too physical to not take care of business against Rutgers. Point blank, period, no questions asked.
Joe, it's your last Go for 2 pick for this week. What do you got for us?
This is not a 3-unit bet, but I am going back to a game that we've already talked about, and I'm picking something else. Hey, Kyle, you should like this because this is a bet that you had. Washington, Oregon, give me the under of 48 points. This game is going to be a game that both teams are going to want to avoid mistakes. They're going to lean on their rushing offenses. Washington games this year, folks, 7 of 8 times the under has hit. I think Oregon knows they're the better team. They won't want to try to give Washington any hope with an unnecessary turnover. It's going to be cold and rainy at Husky Stadium. I think that this under hits due in large to the anemic Washington offense.
All right, guys, it's time to get bold. Joe, we're starting with you. What's your bold bet for this week?
All right. Texas. I'm in on the horns. Give me the horns to beat Iowa State today. Texas plays really good football every week for about 3 quarters, and then they blow it. I think it's Is it three
Correct.
straight games they've blown a double-digit lead in the fourth quarter? Their fortunes change this week with an outright win over an overrated Iowa State team that is coming off a loss at West Virginia. Steve Sarkisian's a good coach. Eventually, this team is going to learn how to win. I think it comes together this week, and they win outright against Iowa State.
I definitely see Kyle sending you some horns down sometime in the fourth quarter of this game. But it's fine. Kyle, what's your bold bet for this week?
I mean, I had Texas last week, and they were in the dog parlay. We each did the three dog money line parlay, and I said, "Man, Texas looking good. Going to take care of business. Get the first leg done." Nope, choked away. 10-point second half lead. I'm taking. Joe mentioned that Iowa State lost at West Virginia in Morgantown. I'm betting that West Virginia does it again. They are playing against Oklahoma State. Highly ranked team. This would be the second highly ranked upset for West Virginia at home. Neil Brown says, trust the climb there in Morgantown, and I am trusting that they're going to continue to climb up above 500 and legitimize themselves, get into bowl contention. West Virginia's playing their best ball right now. I think they do it 2 weeks in a row and beat Oklahoma State.
Can speak from experience.
Kyle.
The climb to the stadium there in Morgantown is one hell of a walk.
It is a climb. It is a climb.
All right, Kyle, closing us out with a Big 12 upset. We'll definitely be tuned into that one to see if West Virginia can pull it out. That's it for this week's edition of the Money Down presented by BetPrep. Join us right back here tomorrow for the NFL edition of the Money Down presented by BetPrep at 11:45 a.m. Eastern Time. We hope to see you then, but have a great Saturday.